Hello and welcome back to another narrated tour of a place in Scotland. Today I thought I'd take you to a certainly more historical part of Scotland, Balquidder. Balquidder sits near the head of Loch Voil. I've actually wanted to go here for a while. One of the main reasons is due to a certain character of Scotland, Robert MacGregor, or you might know him as Rob Roy, or Rob Roy MacGregor. Now, Robert MacGregor was baptised on March the 7th, 1671 in a place called Buchanan in Stirlingshire. He died on the 28th of December 1734 in actual Balquidder. He was a noted Highland outlaw whose reputation as a Scottish Robin Hood, and it was actually exaggerated. This whole story about his life was more exaggerated by Sir Walter Scott's book Rob Roy, which was published in about 1818. Rob himself was what you'd call a freebooter, with some uncertain loyalties to James II, and was probably actually really only engaged in cattle herding or cattle stealing and blackmail, which in that time was actually still allowed and still became honourable Highland practices. When the laws were changed, the MacGregors were reintroduced in 1693, I think it was. Rob took the name of Campbell because his mother was also a Campbell. Since his lands lay between those of the rival houses of Argyll and Montrose for a time, he was actually able to play one off against the other. James Graham, who was the first Duke of Montrose, the two of them didn't get on. He was succeeded in entangling him in debt, and by 1712 Rob Roy was ruined. Rob actually pursued and embarked on a career on brigandage at the expense of the Duke of Montrose, whom Rob actually continued to blame for his downfall. They just feuded for years. They just had a personal vendetta against each other, and during the pro-Stuart Jacobite rebellion, the sort of early one, 1715, he was distrusted by both sides. After the rebellion was kind of thwarted, he was treated leniently because of the insertion of John Campbell, who was the second Duke of Argyll. He actually had to surrender in 1717 to the Duke of Atholl, but he got away. Through the protection of the Duke of Argyll, Rob was again caught and once again imprisoned, and he was supposedly about to be transported back to Barbados in 1727, 1728, but he received a pardon from King George I, and he decided that it was time just to relax and chill out. He was not getting any younger. He was in his early mid-50s. He did live the rest of his life in relative peace. He did have an occasional duel or two, and he became a sort of law-abiding citizen, but the stories that Walter Scott portrays is certainly not necessarily the real stories. The actual Balquidder Kirk, where I stand and turn around, was built in 1631 by a guy called David Murray, Lord Scone, or Scone. As you can see, it lies in ruin. It stands on even older grounds of worship. There had been a Catholic chapel before the Reformation, so the first church was probably built around the 12th century, around about that time. The McLaren chiefs are buried here within the ruined walls of the kirk around 1500, and the MacGregors moved in after the Campbells drove them out of Argyll. Again, there's the conspiracy in regards to, is it McLaren territory, MacGregors moving in and all those sort of things. Rob joined the Jacobite Rising at the age of 18. He was badly wounded in the Battle of Glen Shiel in 1719. He was a soldier, he was a cattleman, he was a wheeler dealer in some respects, selling rich lowlanders protection against cattle rustling. So basically he was thieving and gave the soul kind of in money to the poor people. Outlawed and evicted from his home at Inversnaid, and in the top right hand corner you'll see a wee card for the Inversnaid area, which I walked the West Highland Way a wee while ago. You can have a look at the general area of it. So he was evicted from his home in Inversnaid. He lost everything to Montrose, and he kept pushing to fight to get it back. Rob Roy spent the rest of his life in the area in the Glen, and he died in his 60s in December the 28th, 1734. So I thought I would actually just take a wee tour down to actually the main road. I say main road, but the only road in through Balquidder. Have a look at the loch and the hills and the glen itself, and it's just unreal, guys. It's absolutely phenomenal. If you are coming up here, take your time, spend a day, get the boots on, have a walk. People who love walking, there is actually a Rob Roy Way which starts from Drimmen, which actually is part of the West Highland Way, but then it peels off and goes up to Pitlochry. It's 79 miles, so it's a wee bit shorter than the West Highland Way by about 20 miles, something like that. And it's again a glorious looking walk. I've done parts of that, but it would be interesting to do the rest of it again. Everybody remembers Liam Neeson playing the lead role of Rob Roy in the blockbuster movie, but as you've probably known from my channel, I like to go into more detail, like to find out more about these stories. So Mel Gibson playing William Wallace, let's find out a bit more about these characters. Liam Neeson playing Rob Roy, let's find out more about these characters. I go to these places, I find out more about them and do a bit of research, and that's what I hope you that watch and listen will find out more about these things, either from my channel or from other people's channels, or reading books, or getting right into the nitty gritty of who these people were. The issue with the grave, which you've seen, is actually, is it his real grave? Now, people think, well, why wouldn't it be? Because he died in Balquidder. But the theory goes that obviously this is different clan land. Why would a rival clan of the McGregors be buried in a clan of somebody else, a rival clan's graveyard? Why would that happen when all his uncles and other family McGregors are all buried on the Loch Lomond side, on the Trossachs area? That is McGregor territory. Early records, supposedly around New Year's Day in Balquidder, mention a burial, but nothing is actually found in any register or parish register. The newspaper reported his death, but not his funeral. The heavy stone slabs that covers the alleged grave is much older. Do headstones tell the true story? Do papers and documentation, do they tell the right story? Who knows? Local legend supposedly has it the corpse of the body of Rob Roy was carried along the Bilach Nakor, the local coffin path, down to Loch Lomond, where the McGregors, as I've said, are buried. They're actually on one of the islands on Loch Lomond. The fact of the matter is, Rob, his family were here. He was a bit of a rapscallion. All he wanted was his money back. There was a bit of toing and froing with the Duke of Montrose. He got a name for himself. He lived in his younger days a very close to the bone lifestyle. The stories that have come out of this have celebrated his life. They may have turned him into more of a rogue. They may have made him a superhero. They may have made him to be a bad guy. The decision is yours, guys. The decision is entirely yours. All these people do have stories behind them. Who doesn't? Maybe it is his grave, maybe it's not. But you can't help but look at this area and how the stunning beauty of it. I would want to be buried in a place like this. Wouldn't you? I loved walking around this graveyard, knowing potentially that these people, like the McGregors and all these clan chiefs, stood here back in various centuries. The graveyard is kept very tidy, it's well looked after, it's respected. You have the newer church, as you've seen. You have the old kirk that's now slightly demolished, no roof, etc. on it. But touching these walls just gives you an element of history, gives you a TARDIS back to these days, and I love it. You just feel the history pouring out of the grass, pouring out of the stones, and the stories that all these people had to tell. So I hope you enjoyed this narrated tour of the kirk and a wee bit of Balquidder itself. I thought it was stunning. But I hope you learn things from these things, and maybe actually go and check out these places out for yourself, read about them and the people that are involved and the stories that they have. So guys, that pretty much wraps up another narrated tour. I'm glad you came with me and walked around the graveyard and the kirk with me. It's great to have your company. Once again, guys, I'd just like to say thank you. Thanks for watching, listening, commenting. Make sure to subscribe. I'd love to have your company on walks and tours and places to go. Be sure to check out my Facebook and Instagram. I do actually have started doing some TikTok as well, would you believe?
nothing too major, but just like to get into that side of things as well. But again, check out all those guys. And until the next adventure, speak to you all soon, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye bye.